Okay, I think we are officially back. Welcome to This Is Your Mind on AI. My name is Chris Mercer. Most people here call me Mercer. You are invited to as well. And today, I thought in this live stream, let's do something. This comes from the community, which, by the way, don't necessarily subscribe to this channel yet if you haven't already. But we do have a community back for subscribers in the channel where they're having conversations. We can do polls with each other and kind of figure out what topics we want to solve and work with AI just to get different perspectives and insights on stuff, because some of us will react differently if we have different insights. And I am inspired because of something I did yesterday on something we did that I saw on the Daily Show that was specifically around AI. Not that it's misinformation exactly, I just think it's part of a story, and there's a lot more information that's contained within that conversation that you can pull out of with AI to see kind of the missed opportunities that were there to be able to move things forward and have a useful discussion, instead of just everyone just complaining about stuff and saying that somebody else has to do something to fix whatever the thing is that's wrong with my world, which is what everyone keeps doing. And I understand that. I have been there. I have done that before. I'm sure I will do that again. I'm just trying to do that a whole lot less now. To that end, this particular YouTube video struck me as a really good one to do this with, because there have been so many freaking react videos to this thing in a specific part of politics. Not that we're going to make this a political channel. It's not. It's about the conversations we're having and the patterns of conversations that are everywhere. We're having them around AI. We're having the same pattern, the exact same pattern in politics. We have the same pattern in healthcare. We have the same pattern of conversation every single time. The conversation basically goes like, I think we should do it like this, but I can't make that happen because I can't control anything. So you need to do it my way. And the other person says, I would totally do it that way, but you don't understand how things work. You need to do it like this so that you can actually help me. And then everything just goes back and forth, and everybody at best agrees to disagree. I'm going to try to put a little bit of a AI twist on this, because in these conversations, there is usefulness that is not there. At least that's kind of my guess. I believe there is usefulness that's not there. And I believe because of the patterns of the conversations that are happening, we can actually see the conversation that should have happened. And if we can see the conversation that actually was useful using AI, that means we can actually get the useful message from what well-meaning people are attempting to convey. Because there's no one out there, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's somebody out there trying to create problems. There's always those people, but they're outliers. That's not all of us, but we're treating everybody like it's all of us, and it's not. It's just the crazies on the other side. Whatever the argument is, doesn't matter. Politics, healthcare, AI, doesn't matter. There's always going to be extremes on both sides. They're the outliers. That's just how it works. Most of us, the other 80% of the people who are the fairly normal ones, that as far as we think ourselves to be, we're not participating as much as maybe they are. And so we see all of their stuff as content. I'm trying to create not content, I'm creating participation here. This is why you don't see me saying, hey guys, I don't care. I need you. There are no hey guys on YouTube. I don't know why people kept doing that. There's not 1,000 people watching YouTube channel. Oh, I get it. I know there's watch parties. I get it. Mostly, this is just you and me talking. It's always been you and me talking. It's probably always going to be you and me talking. Like, that's just what it's like, because this is a one-to-one medium. Technology mostly is to some extent, especially when there's connection. And if it's not one-to-one, there can't be a connection. It's really difficult to connect to millions of people across the planet, really. It's super easy to broadcast to them and make them think they are connected because they liked a thing. But that's not connection. That's not the experience of connection. It's a machine connection, right? I hit a button and I'm connected. It's a mechanical connection. What I want is something different. This is supposed to be an experience, something where you come to this channel because you want to participate in something because you want to change, not because somebody else out there needs to change and you want an opinion that basically matches yours that says, yeah, okay, cool, that's right. It's not my problem. It's their problem to solve. I don't think that. I think it's my problem to solve politics. I think it's my problem to solve healthcare. I'm going to work on that this afternoon. I'm going to do what I can. And for those of you who are like, yeah, you can't do this on your own, I understand. And just because it hasn't reached you yet doesn't mean that it hasn't already happened. Without further ado, let me talk about what we're going to do. I'm going to go through here in this YouTube video. This was a back and forth conversation. Here's why I like this one. This is not a left-right thing at all. This is an example conversation, in this case, which happens to be on the left. There is a big thing that's going on in the Democratic Party where they are trying to figure out which direction to turn. And this is happening everywhere. Everyone's actually trying to do this, but it's a really good example here. With these two guys, a guy named Ezra and a guy named Ta-Nehisi, that are actually friends in real life that are on very different sides of this little debate / argument. And long story short, there was a big public brouhaha over this. It became they did a little podcast, tried to talk it out. And all they are essentially doing is digging in on each side and at best agreeing to disagree. And we just have to have a lot less of these agree to disagree conversations, because that's not the point. Agreeing to disagree sounds useful, but all it does is all you're saying is, let's agree to stay stuck. Let's agree to not do anything. Let's agree that we can't move things forward. Like, okay, but why can't we agree that we can move things forward and we just agree on what we can move forward? Not that we have to move forward entirely in my way, because I am 100% certain that my way is the best way and there can be another way, and you absolutely have no good points on your side at all. There is common ground. The problem is we're not communicating common ground. We're not connecting on common ground. And people with platforms right now are trying. I believe they're desperately trying. I think both people here are desperately trying to connect with one another, but they're missing each other. I see that pattern, just missing each other. But I don't know what the actual usefulness of this conversation is. I just know it has it, and I know I'm not experiencing it. I'm experiencing two guys disagreeing to disagree for an hour and a half, and this is the same conversation that the whole thing's that they've been having, and then everyone's gonna shout on one side how one's right, and the other people are gonna defend how the other one was right, and no one's actually gonna do anything. We're just going to keep spinning in circles, because that's all we've been doing for years, because we're misusing technology, because we're not operating technology. And so I want to try to operate it a little differently, and AI is one of the easiest tools to start operating, so you can kind of pull back the veil a little bit and go, okay, these guys delivered a message, but I bet I can get a more useful message if I use tools to help me look for those. But you probably don't even realize you can do that with AI. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, where to do this? First, I'm going to show you everything you can do, I'm doing. Everything I'm going to do, you can absolutely do. Because I'm doing this on free accounts, I'm doing this with Gmail accounts, I'm doing this with everything that anybody can create at any point in time. The only thing I'm going to start with is this thing called Delete. So when you click on this, it'll take you to the gem that you can use. That's all I'm doing. So this is a free gem that we've created. Essentially what this does is use something called latent experience prompting. And this is where we go through and we get AI to help experience from a different perspective, to use its experience in its database and link to all of that. And instead of us telling it what we want it to do, we basically just sort of give it the current state of what's going on, and then have it link everything around that so it fills in the blanks of what's going on. And then we say, cool, now that you've filled in all the blanks, here's what we think is going on from our perspective. Now you've added all your extra experience and connections based on that. Now that you can see the whole picture that we can't see, please tell me what's going on. Like, what's the actual usefulness that I'm not seeing here? Because it feels like this message should be useful, but it just isn't. It's just causing more enragement and more reactions and more likes and shares and clicks and ads to be spent, which is fine, but that's using technology. That's being a user of technology. And I really want to be operating technology, which means I need the message. I don't want the enragement. I don't want the likes, shares, and clicks. I don't want to have to look at 28 people saying I'm right for my opinion. I prefer to not have that. I would just like to move things forward in my own life, period. Because that's all I can control. I can't control what anybody else thinks. I can't control what anybody else does. I can only control what I do, what I think, how I think. And AI is a really good tool to do that. So here's how we're going to do it. And you can do this with anything that is any type of video like this. I'll probably, depending how this one goes, we'll see if we do more or less of this. All right, so in here, you scroll down, you see I'm doing that. I'm just going to click on where it says show transcript. When you do that, I'm just going to pop my face off here. You can see right up here is the transcript. So all I'm doing, again, just using YouTube, technically operating YouTube right now, I am not using YouTube the way that YouTube wants me to use YouTube. YouTube does not want me to combine this with AI, because now I'm going off the YouTube platform and I'm not clicking on anything else. But I'm not paying attention with how YouTube wants me to use YouTube. I'm using YouTube because I am the operator of YouTube. I will tell YouTube how I'm using it. Now, fortunately, they give ability to do transcripts, which is awesome, right? but I'm using it in a different way. They're not saying, oh, here's what you should do. Go grab a video that's enraging you and actually go use AI to figure out what they really should have said so you can find something useful from them so we can actually move things forward. They're not saying that. They're saying watching the video and react and get enraged and everything else. And this is just ridiculous. Why are we allowing that to happen? But we do. So I'm copying. All I'm doing is going to copy this. Now that I have that, we're going to go back to that same leap gen. And all this does is just set it up. Those of you, by the way, that want the latent experience prompting stuff and everything else, there was a whole other community I have, automated with .tech, where I'm just teaching all that stuff. Because there are live streams, and I will keep them here. So if you really want, there's a 2-hour live stream that's on this channel that I'm keeping here. But initially, I was going to teach a bunch of stuff here around how to do that. And the people that were coming in early, I realized they're not going to be AI people. They don't really want to learn prompting. They just want to have a better life with AI. So that's kind of what this channel is about. And that's going to be a lot of gems and things like that to make it easier for most people to get most usefulness out of AI. And then all the more technical stuff, for those of you who really want to get into experience-based prompting, that's where it's going to be at automated with .tech. And that's where we'll build stuff out there. So you're more than welcome. That's also a free community. It's just a different type of conversation. So if you want that type of experience, that's where you go. If you want to learn the nitty gritty of this stuff, because it does take a little bit of operator skills because you're literally not a user. It's not push button simple. And if you keep treating tech like it's push button simple, you're still going to be a user of tech, and you don't want to be used by tech. You want to operate the tech, right? So how do we operate YouTube? Well, we're operating YouTube by grabbing the transcript, and I'm not listening at all to what these guys are going to say. I already have, because I know what was going on, but I'm not gonna care about that. I'm giving it to AI, and I want AI to listen to it. Why would I go through all of this? I just want to get the good stuff, right? I want to get the insights that I could use. So I'm gonna have AI do this. Now, I'm gonna operate this one slightly differently. Normally, you could just put in whatever you want. You sort of just talk about what's going on in life and where the current state of things are. And I can definitely do that. In fact, I will do that. So let's just do this. So I'm gonna say, this is transcript. Now I'm doing what I'm calling a container. Call it whatever you want. The words don't matter. But I'm creating this little kind of container here. Those of you that happen to know HTML kind of are familiar. It's like, this is the start of the transcript. And then putting this little thing here, like, this little symbol like this kind of shows it's the end of the transcript. And then all I'm doing is I'm pasting the transcript in. So there's the transcript coming through. So let's make sure I got everything. Looks like 3152 is where it ended. Whoop, didn't get everything. That's not good. We got to get all the conversation. 3152. I don't know why that didn't work. Let's just try this. Let me go to docs really quickly. It's going to paste it in. And this is it. Okay, perfect. I'm just going to grab all of that. All right. This is sometimes what we have to do. So I've got, this is a context window problem. Okay. So here's what's going on, I think. Right now, I put in so much that the box filled up, right? Can't put a ton of stuff in here, so I'm just doing it a slightly different way. I copied and pasted it into a Google Doc, right? I did that kind of quick. But just all you need to do is just go to docs.new. Some of you may have just noticed I did that. So if you go to docs.new, it opens up an automatic Google Doc, period. So you don't have to do anything else. It's just kind of nice and easy. If you don't need it, just close it out, automatically goes away. Otherwise, you can name it. So what I'm going to do is just call it name it transcript. And then we've got in the My Drive section there, and I think this will be fine. So I'm just going to keep it in here. I pasted it in. It's 23 pages of a transcript that's coming in. All right, perfect. So now I've got my transcript. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over and attach my transcript. Give me just 1 second. So we're going to go, and I'm just going to add from my drive. There we go. So the way that this works, let me just show you. Oops. All right, so we're back on Gemini. Okay, so we're in the transcript. The way this is going to go, I'm going to click here. We're going to go to add from drive. There's my transcript already in my Google Drive because it was opened up there. That's where that is. That's why it's so nice and easy to kind of get to. It's also why I like being able to do it from Google Drive, Gemini stuff. But again, it doesn't matter. You can just ChatGPT or whatever. The leap gen you'd have to use in Gemini. But if you want the instructions, go to automated with .tech and you can do it all there because then you'll have to customize it. The transcript here is now attached. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to guide this. Normally, you sort of just, with a gem, you sort of just talk out what's going on. but I haven't really given it anything of what's going on, it's going to think the transcript is what's going on, and that's going to be a wrong direction for it. So I'm not going to operate AI with this gem in this way, with this particular transcript by itself as a prompt. I have to give it a little bit of like, here's what's going on with this, right? So here's what I'm going to do. And this is where the experience prompting will come in. And you'll hear me speak a little differently as I go through this. I'm just going to make sure I get my mic turned on here. All right. So now I'm just going to turn this on. This should pop up a little thing here. Oops. All right. Now I got the mic working. Perfect. Okay. Here we go. I've attached a transcript that is a description of an experience. I would like you to go through this transcript, this description of an experience, and note in that description of an experience what the experience was highly likely to be for each individual that was in this experience. I would also like you to experience the opportunities that were potentially missed to find common ground and additional usefulness that are so obvious, but only obviously useful when they are pointed out, because you have to know to look for them. And in this case, the speakers and the participants in the conversation missed them because they weren't looking for them. So I'd like you to go through and experience what I am trying to experience, and then give me back what I'm looking for as an ultimate experience in order to find the usefulness from this conversation. Now, I'm not expecting any of you to be able to do that right away. I know that sounds weird to do, but there's very purposeful reasons why I was languaging it like that. This is some of the stuff, again, we'll teach it automated with .tech, but this is more just pattern-based. You'll notice in here too, by the way, I'm saying experience a bunch. That is literally because I'm triggering the LLM. Word experience contains experience like skill and knowledge, also links to experience like, oh, I have the nuanced experience of how to use the skills and knowledge, right? The nuance of experience is what is really useful in AI, and that is the thing that we mostly disconnect from AI when we tell it how to do things. So I'm not telling it how to do things as much as I am saying, experience this, experience this, experience this, give me an experience, and let's see what happens. I'm not at all confident this is going to give me anything useful. I'm not trying to do that. I mean, I am ultimately, but I'm not trying to commit to that. It's just kind of like, hey, I'm going to steer it here. We're going to see if it's useful, and if it's not, no big deal. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it or anything else. I'll just change the prompt and try something else to get to where I'm trying to get to, right? It's not about AI being right and wrong. It's about, is this useful or not? So what I'm doing is now I'm looking for insights to change how I think about this content, not to change how you think about this content. But if that accidentally happens, then awesome, because we both have the experience. And if we both change how we are interacting with content like this on a platform like YouTube, imagine how the content on YouTube will change, because we would have changed, and content producers, creators, whatever you want to call us, we are the ones that will produce different types of content because the market is changing, because you changed, because I changed, because we don't like this shout at each other content and not do anything because it's completely useless. Not completely useless. There are at least conversations happening. So there's usefulness. It's just not as useful as maybe other ways. Let's find out if we can make it more useful for ourselves, because they're not helping us. All right, so we're describing a conversation by nature, an expression of the core political conflict over time. They're stuck in a false binary, right? You and the participants are stuck in a false binary. It's more important to reach out, pragmatism, or hold the line, principle. Which one is more important? Your request to find the ultimate experience is the perfect internal recognition that the usefulness of this conversation is latent. That means it's not immediately observable. It's not immediately obvious. You have to know where to look for what they said. You have to look in the words between the words, the sentences between the sentences, the thoughts between the thoughts. That's what we're trying to do. It's not found in what they said, but in how they needed each other to say it. You probably heard this before. I know I've heard this before. It's like, I can't hear what you're saying because the way you're saying it, kind of thing. That's what's going on. We've all learned this when we were kids, and for some reason we're just not using this useful knowledge, right? But that's because maybe we just don't have the skills much anymore, because we're not modeling it for each other. So many of us are not doing it, that we're just modeling what we all do, what everyone else is doing. So everyone else is screaming at each other and pointing at each other to do it, to change the world so that my world is better. Change your world so my world is better. Okay, but that's ridiculous, because you're constantly putting all of your agency in the hands of other people. And you're literally using your agency to do it. The only power you have is the power to decide what to do, and you're deciding to give it to other people, and then you're mad that they're not improving your life. I get that. I've been there. I've had those thoughts, but they are not useful thoughts. I don't want to say they're insane. They're not, but because I get the logic behind it. Sometimes you're like, hey, if somebody's hitting you, you're like, please stop hitting me, and you want them to do that. But you can also just leave the room, get out of the way, never be around that person again, right? You don't have to go out and hit that. My point is there's other options, and I'm trying to figure out what the other options are, and AI helps us with that, because why would I want to think through all this stuff? We've been trying to think our way out of this for way too long. I just need the insights where I go, oh, I never thought about it before. If you were looking at this video, right? If we went back to this and we said, oh, let's rewatch it again, but we're not going to watch it for what they said. We're going to look for how they needed each other to say it, and we're going to see where they missed that. It would be a very different experience for you. You probably would leave with different thoughts, probably a little more useful conversation. So the necessary schism, right? So what they say that we're experiencing here. It's frustrating. It's paralyzing feeling watching two people you respect, both good opinions, right? I'm not saying either one's wrong. Don't care what the politics of it, it doesn't matter left and right and wrong. It does not matter. This is the whole point of this. It's what's useful in the idea, that whoever it is has an idea. What is useful about the idea? I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter. But I'm using it as an example because this is what we're all caught up in. And I've definitely been in the past. So there's two people watching you respect, struggle against each other, both arguing for what is morally and strategically necessary. You know they both want the same thing, to defeat hate and preserve democracy, in this case, right? I'm not saying that's what's going on either. Please don't freak out if that's you. That's not what I'm saying, because again, you're caught up in right and wrong, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm looking for a conversation where two people are caught up in a pattern, and there's a billion of them on all the sides. So it doesn't matter. I just needed an example of one. This is a good one. So their methods seem diametrically opposed, which is true. They are on two sides. Does this sound familiar? One's on one side, one's on the other side. Oil and vinegar. It doesn't seem like either one will ever agree, and neither one can somehow coexist in the other's world for some reason. Just doesn't ever seem to be possible. The loop you are stuck in is I must choose a side. But choosing a side feels like betraying the ultimate goal. You're looking for synthesis and all you can find is friction. That's exactly right. That is my experience of this video. I watched it going, this is just useless. I say useless. I should say less useful. That's how I should say that. It is a lot less useful. It was not particularly the most useful conversation it could have been. It wasn't their fault. I get it. I've had conversations like this with some really good friends. I've been in this loop. I get it. It is so hard to realize you're in it, especially real time. But that's why I think we need to slow down and start using AI a little more to help each other have a more useful conversation, because let's face it, at least I can face it, I need training wheels now. I have been thinking myself in a frenzy for so freaking long, as I think all of us have, that I don't necessarily, it's not just, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's just not that easy. My brain is already used to doing it. So it's naturally doing it. So I need the training wheels. I want the AI to come in and say, hey, before I make any major decisions on how I'm going to react or decide is the right thing or any of that stuff, let's just go through with AI and see kind of what else might be there. And already I'm starting to feel like, okay, AI gets where I'm at. And all I did was say, here's the experience, what's going on, experience the different perspective, experience what my experience might be as a viewer based on those words. That's kind of what I was telling it. So you can see like what's an average experience of a viewer. So here's the magic trick. So the trick is to stop analyzing who is right about the political strategy. That would be awesome. And instead focus on the feeling of success that would result if their perspectives were perfectly combined. Ooh, are we thinking about solutions now instead of always talking about problems? That's different. That's very different. The AI's pattern matching, right, just true. When you ask it to describe a specific latent experience, which is, again, the way we're thinking about this, sensory rich, that means perceptions, touch, feel, sound, sight, right, hearing, all that stuff. Emotionally charged, that's the feeling, ramping up the feeling stuff. Those descriptions give a lot of context, massive amounts of context to the AI, because they light up more things in the LLM, right? That's sort of what's going on there. So with more connections, because of that, there's more nuance. And if the LLM has available more nuance, means levels of quality, levels of usefulness, it can actually give you more useful results. That's why these latent prompts, these experience prompts work. So the old way, you might say, hey, analyze the argument for the engagement and the guest argument for moral clarity, provide a 3-point list of common ground, focusing their shared anxieties and about political violence. And honestly, I think that's like an okay prompt to start with. At least somebody's trying to say, hey, here's the one, here's the other. What do they have in common? That kind of makes sense. You would do that with AI. However, it's academically correct, right? It means you would think it works, which is true. It's functionally useless. This is at least the AI saying it, not me this time. It'll give you a bloodless summary. They both acknowledge the power of hate. They both worry about political violence. This keeps the core conflict, pragmatism versus principle, intact. All it says is they both are doing this, they're both are doing that. Neither one, both are right, both are wrong. Let's all agree to disagree and move on because nothing's actually going to change. Neither one's actually changing. And if neither one of these individuals changes, no one else changes. Can't. So now we're going to go through, okay, what's the latent experience prompt that we could use to actually go through this and see the conversation that's actually useful, not the conversation they shared on YouTube. Again, I'm operating technology here. I'm not letting YouTube, even the YouTube creators, give me a message that I have to accept and react to and like and subscribe and share. None of that matters. I'm letting them give me a message that I'm going to AI going, wow, this message was not a good experience for me. It made me feel like everyone's agreeing to disagree and both sides are always going to be doing this and no one's ever going to get out of the way. And regardless of who I thought was right or wrong, they both seem to have a little bit in common, but I feel like I need to pick a side because there's no other alternative of something in the middle. There's always left or right, A or B, right or wrong, good or bad. And that's a frustrating experience. So when I have that experience, I don't accept that from technology. I use technology to adjust my experience, which I'm doing with AI. I'm just using a different technology, but I'm using technology. I'm operating technology here. I'm not going to automatically decide that I was right for how I reacted to that video because I'm not reacting to the video because I don't know that I'm right about it. I'm saying this is not a great experience. I'm going to run it through AI now and say, what's the better experience? So now AI comes back and says, this is the prompt that you would give if you want to figure this out. And this is what I'm going to say. So I listened to the full conversation between the host, arguing for political engagement and cooling down the rhetoric in face of violence, and the guest, arguing for historical clarity and moral steadfastness against hate. I want you to imagine a third silent participant, a veteran organizer sitting in the room, describe the exact moment, including the internal monologue, and with nonverbal cues, when this organizer realizes the true profound usefulness of the conflict that we're watching. That's what I want to experience. I want to be the third person in the room, the viewer, watching these two guys go back and forth, not listening to each other, which again, I desperately think they were trying to, but they weren't because of how they were responding. You could see that. And if you can't see that, I get it. You will, because the reason I saw it is because I've used AI an awful lot to be like, wait a second, is this really what's going on? Let me see if there's something actually more useful here. And that's literally all I do. Hey, AI, is there something more useful here? And AI is like, yeah, you should skip all this stuff. Here's actually what you should do. This is what I'm trying to show. So now it says, all right, what this prompt does is then say, okay, here's what the prompt, that you could have done is, oops, wrong one. So grab my screen. Here's the prompt you should have used if you had done that, right? So then it's like the realization must be the host and the guest, not arguing over what to do, but over who does it, right? Which is interesting. So now it's not over what, it's who. That's important because we are always talking about what somebody else can do, but we're not actually saying somebody else all the time because that sounds weird. If you keep saying somebody else has to do it, somebody else has to do it, somebody else has to do it, eventually, even yourself, you're going to be like, crap, I keep saying it's everybody else's fault. And that seems like a weird thing because I have no power if I do that. I'm literally giving away my agency to everybody all the time and they don't want it. They have their own lives to run, even though they're giving their agency away to everybody else too, who also doesn't want it. So everyone's giving away their power to people who don't want the power to run your life. And so what's happening? They're not running your life. And so your life is maybe getting not so useful, but that's not on them. And that's kind of what this is saying. It's who's going to be taking the action. I'm kind of curious where this goes. Write a close third person narrative as realization. The narrative must communicate a single key phrase or insight the organizer mentally labels as the blueprint for effective political alliance. Okay. Is there a way we can do this? Let's see. So what'll happen now is in this exact same conversation, again, all we basically did is say, experience the transcript, tell me what you experience and what a viewer's likely to experience. That's all we are right now. To me, I'm already getting insights of shifting my perspective on this. I have other perspectives now in my head, other ways of thinking about it. So I'm not locked into a battle that I was kind of recruited into by big tech because I get the likes and the shares and whatever the algorithm thinks I'm supposed to see, but I don't have to react to that because I'm not being used by big tech. I appreciate big tech. I'm just operating it back. I'm saying, great, show me that. Let's go through it. And I go, okay, now let's give it to AI. And I'm going to continue to process the message. I'm not just going to react. I'm going to think about things for a little bit, decide what is useful, and then I'm going to take action. It's very different. And so it's a lot less stressful, I have to say. Now, what's going on now is the same prompt is saying, if you had given me that prompt with that, and I knew that transcript, here's something I might have come back with. So it's giving us an example of what this might be like. So here's your likely output. The organizer, Sarah, right, made up the organizer, sat back on the shadow of the mixing board, listening to the final exchange about the historical scopes. This is basically somebody in the background that's helping them, in this podcast that our AI made up, somebody that's in the background here. Imagine you maybe in the background of this. You're just sort of organizing things, making sure the sound levels are good as it's going through. The host is leaning forward, visibly frustrated, asking how to win back the lost voters. The guest, Tanahasi, was leaning back, shoulders squared against the weight of centuries, simply stating the fight is long and that it must be faithful to the contribution that we're meant to make. We have to be faithful to the contribution that we have to keep steady. We shouldn't change. The other one's like, we have to change. That's essentially always, that's every argument. It's, we don't want to change, we should change. And it's not that, it's you should change, and I don't want to change. That's typically what happens. All of them are like that. Same pattern everywhere. Sarah felt the tension in her own chest, the agonizing squeeze between strategy and soul. They are talking past each other, she thought. They are. That's only because they're talking about two different jobs. Okay, interesting. She watched the host run through his hair, dwelling on the latest strategic loss. He was the one who had to build the bridge over the divide, which is true. Ezra, in this case, is the host. His job, you could see, he was trying to build a bridge. That is literally what he was trying to do. The one to make space for grieving, to keep the experiment from toppling into a new regime. He's an expansionist. Okay, I get that. He's trying to expand from where they currently are, to open things up, to include more people, to get more things done. He's trying to expand things. Not a bad thing. Doesn't sound bad. Then she looked at the guest. He was the one who defined the moral architecture of the house that the host is trying to build, insisting that the foundation must not be built on the bones who we've been hated. He was a purist. So let's make sure I read that right. Insisting that the foundation must not be built on the bones of those who've been hated. So what he's basically saying is he's a purist, which is kind of happening. The expansionist is saying we're going to expand at all costs. So it sounds good, but if that was the only rule, that's not great, right? Because there's no constraints on it. Just expand, change, go, change. And change without constraint isn't going to work. That's like a cancer. That's what cancer does. It grows uncontrollably, right? Expands uncontrollably without constraints. You need some sort of constraint. However, purists have only one option for constraint. They're like, this is the constraint. There is no other possible way, because this is the pure, solid answer, the only perspective of all perspectives that will ever be the most useful perspective in all of time, ever. We are at the pinnacle of the absolute right answer. That's a purist. And that's okay. Both sides need to exist, but they exist on the extremes, not in the masses. The rest of us understand there are shades of gray, but we're not able to have those conversations because we're just listening to the purists and to the expansionists on either side. The ones who say we have to change, again, well-meaning people. Nothing's wrong with their arguments, nothing at all. There's some usefulness in both sides. There is not usefulness in all of the one and all of the other, because those two sides do not move forward. They just talk. Nothing actually changes, right? And so we got that. I think that kind of nails it, because I think that's exactly what he was saying in there. I believe that. I think that's exactly my experience of it. He was talking about we should just ignore the people that have hated, just ignore them, get rid of them. I understand the argument, and I understand the challenge of it, because you just need shades of gray. So anyway, flash of understanding hit her, powerful enough to make her grip the armrests. The host's grief as an engagement impulse. Now this was a conversation around the Charlie Kirk assassination, and Ezra was basically saying he had done a thing in the New York Times saying, I don't like what he said, but I like that he was saying and having conversations and at least open to debating in public and trying to get people to talk. Like, can we not at least like that? And Ta-Nehisi was basically saying, yeah, no, because of what he said, we don't like him and we're not going to. So I'm like, okay, like and everyone's like, what? How does that work? How is that useful? And that's what both sides are saying. How is your side useful? Instead of seeing what a third option that is a combination of the two, maybe. The single key phrase she meant to label the blueprint was, the host is the hinge that lets the door open. The guest is the frame that stops the house from collapsing. Which is pretty interesting. So they're both right, but I do not have an exact usefulness out of this yet. So this is what the leap is for. The insight is that this is happening. We have one on one side, one on the other side, both right, kind of both equally right. If we describe that as equally useful, meaning they both have good concepts, good ideas, good strategies, and I'm sure tactics, but neither one is completely right. If they were, things would be useful. And if they were useful, we would be moving things forward because they would be useful. But right now, things are not useful. That's why they're not moving forward. So somebody has to say something different, or at least think something different for half a second. And so just to see what happens, that's what I'm trying to do. So the host on the hinge lets the doors open, the guest in the frame stops the house from collapsing. Interesting. All right. So now it's kind of going through, okay, you process the emotional compass for navigating this kind of necessary conflict. You've stopped trying to judge which person was right and have instead realized the profound usefulness, the missed opportunity was simply the participants not articulating the need for each other. In other words, if one of them had said, hey, you have some good points, what if we took like your chocolate and my peanut butter and put it together? And what if the other person had said, you know what, I don't like that, but I do like you said this. What if you took your chocolate and my peanut butter, we put it together, and all of a sudden we have a cool little candy bar, right? That's the whole idea here. So the usefulness is role clarity. The host role is to push for strategic compromise, engagement, de-escalation. The guest role is to anchor the entire enterprise in historical truth and moral principle. Both useful, very useful. The ultimate veto when the bridge threatens moral betrayal. By moving from analyzing the problem, which is disagreement, to modeling the solution, which is the alliance, you've successfully used the tension in the conversation to create a blueprint for action. Now, how will you apply this lesson of complementary tension to the next political, professional, or personal conflict you encounter? Right? Interesting. I'll look for it, number one. But what I really want to do is do what you should do, probably, which is when you're using this gem, you're going to get an experience because it'll say, hey, here's kind of what it would go for. But it's not going to be as, I think, as sometimes it's incredibly useful. And if it is, awesome. In this one, I personally am where I'm already at, which is I know there's something there. There's something in between. It's telling me there's something in between, and I should look for something in between. What I really want to know is what is the something in between? I want it to tell me the thing that I can't see, the thing maybe you're not seeing. So what I'm going to do that, we're going to do a new chat. All I'm doing is copying the prompt, which I did right there. So that's the prompt. And we're going to say, listen to full conversation. And then I'm just going to change one thing. I'm going to say full conversation. See attached transcript, because I'm going to give it the transcript too. That's all I'm doing here. Now, I'm not, at this point, I'm not doing, let me just get this out of the way really quickly, make sure I can see where that is. There we go. X. Okay. Now, I'm not using the gem anymore. I'm just using a free Gemini LLM 2.5 Flash, not even the Pro model, right? Anybody can do what I'm doing. I'm copying the prompt that gem created to basically say, this is a latent experience prompt. So I'm already using latent experience prompting. I'm already going to light up the LLM in the way I need it to so that the AI should be able to produce more useful content. We're going to see if that works. I don't know that it will, but we're going to try. There's my transcript. I'm going to insert it in there. So there's my transcript, and this is all I'm doing. The only thing I added was see attached transcript because it didn't tell me to put the transcript in, and you may not have to, but I really want to see what's in this transcript specifically. That's why I'm doing that, because I want to know what's in this conversation. So now we're going to have it go through that exact same thing again. It's probably going to come back with something similar. I am expecting it to. I'm expecting it to. As an operator of AI right now, what I'm asking AI to do is, hey, use latent experience, pull this thing up. It's probably going to give me something along that little Sarah conversation as the host and how she realizes, or the host realizes that there's something in the middle. It might give me the something, but it might not. But as long as it gives me kind of where Sarah was, which is, hey, I see two sides. I see there's some usefulness in both sides. That's all I need it, because then I can have a conversation about the usefulness, and I'll show you how to do that. So this time it's Sal, veteran organizer, better part an hour, printer a product. So truth and power. Again, I like how AI is helping me think about this. Is it expansion and purists? Yes, but some of you don't like those words, because if I say somebody's a purist, you'd be like, I'm not a purist. And I get that. I'm not trying to make labels. It's honestly not the word that matters. It's the thing that matters, the experience of what's happening that matters. So now it's coming back and saying, hey, actually, this is a structurally perfect, it's a beautiful argument, which it is, but it was just an argument. So a beautiful one, but just an argument, doesn't move anything forward. Structurally perfect, also very good. It was very well thought out on both sides. They did a good job. They just didn't move anything forward. So how much usefulness was there? It's a duel between the high priest of truth and the pragmatic general of power. Also equally useful descriptions of what was going on. Instead of the purist, it was the high priest of truth. And instead of the expansionist, it was the pragmatic general of power. Like, here's where our power, we won't have power. Like, you can scream truth all you want. You're not going to get power unless you change your strategies. Both true. Both true. Both right. This is the weird part. Both right in some ways. The precise moment of crystallization arrived not in crescendo, but in a quiet, almost domestic exchange about job descriptions. The host had just finished arguing his side had stopped doing politics by writing people off, citing the deplorables comment way back when. Everybody remembers that. The guest, with the characteristic firmness, offered his concession a moral and professional firewall. I shouldn't be running for president of the United States, the guest said, and my expectations for the rhetoric of writers, intellectual journal, et cetera, is very different than what the expectation should be for people who know you expect to hold office. So basically, he was basically saying journalists can kind of do this stuff that in public that is not necessarily what somebody else thinks is a useful thing because they're just journalists and not a president. And I understand that argument. I'm not entirely sure I agree with the usefulness of it. Sal's stillness broke. His left hand, resting on his knee, tightened into a fist, squeezing an imaginary stress ball. He leaned into a 4.5 inch, eye snapping from the guest to the host. The host, relieved, immediately affirmed the division. Yeah. So I agree with, right? I think there are different jobs in all of this there. The host arguing for engagement, strategic bridge building, the what, had just ceded the job of moral stewardship to the guest, which is true. We do need somebody who's in that role. The guest, arguing for underlying moral clarity, the what, had simultaneously declined the task of winning power. Sal's internal monologue, honed by 3 decades of coalition building, went silent, then roared back with blinding clarity. I'm hoping it happens for me too. Let's find out. They are not arguing about the mission. They are merely defining their lanes in the mission. The host is the politician who fears losing. The guest is the intellectual who fears lying. Oh, that hits. Because that hits. I think that's nails it. One of them is thinking more like politics, and the other one is thinking more academic. Both are right from that perspective. Both fear loss, but their definitions of loss are different. One is worried about the ballot box, and the other is worried about the soul. Both correct to worry about that. That's what's weird. They're both right still. The truth teller must remain uncompromised so the power seeker can have high ground to climb to. The power seeker must engage the unengaged so the truth teller's message can reach the people who need to act on it. This is really awesome. Oh, I like this is his internal monologue of Sal. He's a veteran, so forgive him. The whole goddamn alliance requires both of them, and their conflict, which is true, the whole alliance requires both, and their conflict is the engine, not the disease. Now that's interesting, because I did see it until recently, really like a second ago, I was seeing it as conflict. And maybe it is an engine. What if it was an engine? What if I see it differently and I don't see the conflict now, I see the discussion, and I'm like, okay, there's an engine here. They're starting to, instead of me going, gosh, they're just doing this. How many times I've done this a bunch on this video. Instead of 2 people doing this all the time, maybe it's like an engine just going, and it's just not starting, but it's trying to start. What if that's it? The usefulness is that they have just defined the necessary division of labor, a separation of powers, where one secures the morality and the other secures the majority. Maybe they should just stop telling each other what to do and both just start doing what they do together. Sal gave a single most imperceptible nod, a nonverbal cue, blah, blah, blah. The moral anchor and political lever. Now, let's see if we can ramp this up. I'd like you to go back and experience the transcript, but I'd like you to experience the experience behind the experience that was highly likely to be the perceived experience, the description of the experience that each of the guest and host went through, each of the participants went through. what was their likely experience of each other? Did they experience in the same way Sal did, or did they have maybe a slightly different description of an experience? And how did it change, if it changed at all, because it may not have? What was the highly likely description of the experience they experienced from their perspective? So again, I'm trying to get AI to basically go back and be like, tell me what the host was thinking, tell me what the other one was thinking from their own thoughts inside their head. We don't know this is true, right? I'm just trying to see if it's useful. So now I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to start skipping through some stuff because it's technically what I do in real world. So the host is Ezra's thing. Tug of war against gravity, which is true. Experience of the guest. He saw the guest as brilliant, a moral actor, which is true. I believe that is true. Yes, your history is right, but your solution is political suicide. That was also what he was saying. Your moral clarity is a luxury I can't afford if the price of the loss is the next election, which is also what he was saying. You're demanding that I choose to be pure but powerless, which kind of is what he was saying. I don't think he was actually saying that, but that is what he was experiencing. And then I need to have a political lever to move the world, and you keep insisting shut my moral life instead. That was also happening. I'm fighting a fire, and you're telling me I can't use water that isn't distilled. Oh, yes. Oh my God, that is exactly right. That was exactly the experience I think he was having. Because there was a part of me that was having that. I could see that perspective. I can feel that. He likely showed impatience in his posture, leaning forward, hands open in gestures of appeal, often cutting or quickly reframing the guest's points to re-anchor them in the language of strategy or electoral consequences. The exchange wasn't a conversation. It was a desperate attempt to find common tactical ground beneath an unmoving ethical mountain. So you're locked in. I'm going to try to figure out how to get you unlocked. And I'm going to be frustrated by it. That's kind of what was going on. So he's asking us to lose nobly, and I'm trying to figure out how to win justly. Oh, how cool is that? All right. Now let's talk about Ta-Nehisi's likely experience. So this is the guest, whose mission is to bear witness to the history and ensure moral lessons are not discarded for political expediency, which is exactly what he was saying. Experience exchange is an urgent defense against moral erosion, which is absolutely what I feel he was experiencing. That's what I experienced he was experiencing. He felt the chilling weight of the past, history's lessons always being forgotten in the current heat of the crisis. Like, there you go. Whitewashing always comes up, right? I get it. Totally. I understand that experience. I get his experience of that. The host is a well-meaning man, but dangerously naive political navigator, right? So he saw Ezra as a dangerously naive political navigator. Like, you're so into politics and wanting to win that you're going to win at all costs, and we're going to lose everything that we are because we won. We're going to win and have nothing for it. It's kind of what he was essentially, I think, saying. So let's go through his internal monologue. He's so afraid. This would be Ta-Nehisi about Ezra. Ezra's so afraid of losing the political game that he's forgetting the moral one. We can't compromise with hate without validating it. He's so busy trying to understand the motivation of the people holding the knife that he's ignoring the victim bleeding out on the floor. His pragmatism is a short-term trick that becomes a long-term betrayal. If we can't be clear on what we're fighting against, we've already lost our moral legitimacy. Now, this is not pulling from the transcript. It is pulling from what it believes the experience of Ta-Nehisi was, or how Ezra was. And I watched this video. I believe if both guys happen to watch this video, they would kind of go like, yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. That makes sense. Because that was, I think, their experience. Some of this might not seem useful in the way that they're reading it. They go, well, yeah, that's what I felt. But I also, when you look at this, you start going, well, yeah, that might not be as useful if I stick to that, though it's true. But where does this go if it's true? You might be right. So what if you're right? If it's not useful, it does not matter if you're right. It has to be useful. Nonverbal cues. He likely maintained a posture of unmoving gravity, a fixed steady gaze. His answer measured and deliberate, his hands often clasped and resting steadily. He offered verbal concessions, like accepting the different jobs point, which was this is in the transcript, but his tone remained firm, signaling the concession was merely an administrative detail, not a retreat from the central moral principle. He used history and literature as shields against the host's call for immediacy, which he did every time. You can see that as a pattern too. And again, I'm not crapping on them for it. Have conversations. We need to have conversations, but they need to be useful. And if we're not having useful conversations, and you know that you tried to have a useful conversation, it is useful. It's just not immediately useful. It's potentially useful until you give it to an AI and you say, find me the usefulness. What's the stuff that I meant to say that I couldn't figure out how to say in the moment, but I would have said if I was aware to say it? And AI will then give you that, which we're about to do. the guest description of the experience. He's trying to save the country by making peace with a lie. I'm trying to save our soul by refusing to tell the lie. Okay. So there's the difference. The host or guest is thinking one of us must be wrong. And Sal, the person in the middle, that's me in this case, maybe you now, the movement requires both of you locked in exactly this conflict. All right. So let's level it up. Now we're experiencing a conversation. Sal has actually already talked to each individual, the host, Ezra, and the guest, Ta-Nehisi. And they've had conversations with Sal, and they've come to this realization where they do have that experience. They understand what that means, that they both are needed and they both have to be locked in exactly this conflict. But now they're starting to realize what that actually looks like. They're starting to realize the obvious usefulness, the missed opportunity that they both walked by, not realizing it was there, but only because they weren't looking for it at the time, because they didn't realize that it was there to look for. So now that we have experienced that, and we've gone through and we've experienced the experience behind that experience, the obvious usefulness that now they both see from each person's perspective, how they can now walk together in common ground and move something forward that is actually useful, that when they talk to Sal and they present what they're planning to do to Sal, Sal sees the obvious usefulness of this and goes, of course this is going to work. What is that experience from their perspective, and what's the experience from Sal's perspective? Now I'm trying to get AI to be creative. I'm trying to get AI to do all the things everyone keeps saying it can't do, which is make something new, create for me an insight in my own brain so I am no longer reacting to tech and messages like from tech, whether it's a YouTube video or not, or politics, or whatever the thing is, doesn't matter. I'm not reacting anymore. I'm able to think about it again. So now I'm coming through. That's what at least I'm hoping. That's what I'm trying to get here. So the breakthrough, the obvious usefulness. I want something new. I need an experience where I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. So after talking with Sal, both the host and guest realized their perceived conflict was in fact an optimal structural tension. They weren't arguing over which path to take, but setting the guardrails for the entire political highway. All right. The host experience, clarity of constraint. The host core frustration, the guest unyielding moral demands suddenly flips into invaluable asset, blah, 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 defining boundary. He stops seeing the guest as an academic who won't get his hands dirty and starts seeing him as an architect of legitimacy. Okay. Sometimes I can see that being useful. If I see you in a different light with a different label, which is just, these are just labels, which are not at all, they're incredibly useful. They're just not meaningful. It's just whatever I decide to call you, I call you. It doesn't matter, right? It's a label. But the label has usefulness to me. So from Ezra's perspective, if I'm thinking of this guy as a purist, then that's going to be a certain type of experience. I don't know what a purist is, right? They're just that type of person. But if they're an architect of legitimacy, it's different. There's some thoughtfulness to it. You know that if they're an architect, there's probably going to be some different perspectives that are involved maybe, right? So now I'm looking at this as somebody who is supposed to help with this thing. I don't have to agree with everything that they're doing, but that's kind of what their job is to help take care of this side of things that I don't necessarily want to do, right? So the host is the one who has to talk to the unconvinced and the compromised. So they should not be fighting each other. They should be talking to each side about the other. That's how they should be doing this, I think, is what it's going to say. But he can only do that without destroying his own credibility if he has an external, uncompromising voice holding the moral line. I think that's exactly what this is saying. They both should be helping each other, and they're just talking about how they should do what the other person is. They're both trying to convince each other to come to each other's side. When I think is what this is saying is if you both just start talking to your respective audiences, whatever that is, and you're trying to help the audience understand the usefulness of the other side, this changes like that. And we get immediate usefulness from it. I'm going to see if I can test that if that's what this is going. I don't know where this is going. I'm just trying to give you my experience as I go through it. The guest function to make sure the host pragmatism does not slide into amoral, which is true. We don't want just a system for a system's sake that doesn't include anything that's moral. For sure, you need to have a little bit of balance, because otherwise how would you judge the usefulness, right, of it? The obvious usefulness. The host realizes the biggest missed opportunity. He tried to do both jobs himself. He tried to be the voice of moral clarity and the voice of political engagement. The effort exhausted him and alienated the guest. The obvious usefulness is the separation of messaging. The plan, from his perspective, the host can now pursue his political engagement strategy, the cooling of the rhetoric, which is probably a pretty useful thing. The reaching across divides, I would imagine, is also a useful thing, with full force, knowing the guest's unyielding voice is creating the necessary moral pressure on the system. So in this case, Ezra is the boat, and Ta-Nehisi can be the wind in the sails of this. But they have to coordinate that. Both have to agree that we both are right. We both can help, but we both have to help together. And in order for that to be true, we have to agree we're both right. We can't agree one of us is wrong and we're going to agree to disagree. We have to agree, ironically enough. So let's go through Ta-Nehisi's experience. So the guest's core anxiety, the historical clarity would be compromised by political necessity, suddenly transforms into a direct pipeline for impact. So it comes from, he's realizing that his moral clarity. Now, again, this is the after experience that we had AI make up here, right? So I don't know that this is where either one of these guys are, but I hope maybe if somebody gets this video to them, they could be, potentially, if it's useful. He realizes that his moral clarity, while necessary, is inert. It doesn't do anything unless it's connected to a mechanism for change. Oh, so true. So true. We've seen this so many years. It's just stuck. Everyone's saying, do this thing. Why? It's not particularly useful. Doesn't matter. Do it anyway. We've decided. Okay. Moral clarity without any connection to anything, any mechanism. This happens a lot. Internal shift. He stops seeing the host as a naive compromiser, which I think is kind of what he was saying. It's what it felt like from my perspective. And he starts seeing him as the necessary conduit. This guy's the boat. You're the wind, man. Like, whew, all you need to do is just do what wind does. Go out there and do that and keep it channeled, but help, instead of telling the boat not to be a boat, that it needs to be the wind. Don't tell the sailboat it needs to be the wind. It's what's going on right now. The host operates inside the machinery of power that the guest, by principle, must stand outside of. I have had experiences like this before, where in this case, the host is, in this case, Ezra. He's trying to get all this political stuff done or whatever and building this and being the boat. But the guest, by principle, has got to be outside of it. Again, the guest is the wind of the sails, not at all the boat. But the two are necessary. The host focuses on politics, polling, and elections, which is true. It's the one thing that can translate the guest's ethical demands into real-world consequences, which I believe is also true. The host is the man who makes the truth matter to people who don't read history books, which is true, because that's kind of what Ezra's doing, right, in this case. Not that he's the only person trying to do that. I'm just saying this is the example. The obvious usefulness. The guest realizes his historical work was often speaking to the already converted or to the history itself. And that is why it's not connected to a mechanism. And that is what an echo chamber is. Because we're just talking to everybody who already agrees with us, so nothing actually is useful anymore, except everyone saying, yep, and feeling better about that everyone else around them is saying, yep, as the world, their own experience gets worse. They get more freaked out. And they convince themselves they're right as everybody freaks out about how right they are. This is what is happening to all of us. The missed opportunity was realizing that the host platform political focus could add as a distribution system for the moral clarity. Imagine that. What if this guy as a messenger now can help craft the message that is pushed through this pipeline that Ezra's building? Now, will it be the exact words he's using? Probably not. But will it achieve the usefulness that he wants? Probably. If we took 45 seconds to work with AI to think it through from a slightly different perspective, if we allow ourselves to think maybe my opinion, my perspective is not the only one. And there's other perspectives out there. Those of you who are data people, please think about this logically. If your only perspective is your thought and feeling about how you are seeing the situation, you are missing out on a network of data that is all the other perspectives on the planet that is available, that your brain automatically goes, nope, those aren't ever going to be useful in any way. Those trillions of different perspectives about the situation. I'm going to ignore all the other possibilities of perspectives, and I'm only going to make my decisions about how I run my life because of my immediate reaction to my immediate thought and feeling and my little individual perspective that I'm definitely right on. Okay. But you just disconnected yourself from the trillions of data points that your brain needs that it's not getting. So of course you're just going to convince yourself you're right and twist yourself into circles. I've done it. I know what this is like. I recognize it, which is why I'm trying to do this stuff. So the plan. So now the guest can double down on the intensity of the moral writing and the historical critiques. Ta-Nehisi can be Ta-Nehisi times 10, which I think he'd be awesome. He literally was talking about sharpening the moral life. That's perfect. He can help define it. He can see things that the rest of us cannot see because that's what he's good at. That's his usefulness. That's his function in society. Be that. Ezra's building the roads. Ezra's the boat. Ezra's doing this other thing. He needs to be that. If the two people do this, this is an unstoppable fix. It's useful. And the system will scale. It'll just automatically start working. You don't have to make it work. If you're trying to make anything work, it's not done yet. You haven't got the product yet. You haven't fixed the machine's not built. You can't make a machine work. A machine that is done works. You're just not done with it yet, not realizing it. So because he trusts the host, is going to take the uncompromising truth and use it as a political tool. The guest's job is to define the ideal, which is fine. He can define an ideal. The host's job is to make the political system move toward the ideal. This is very different. Now it's one person saying, here's our destination. The other one's going, cool, we're not there yet, but I also agree that's our destination. What can we do to move things forward based on that direction? How cool is that? Somebody's the GPS, somebody's the car, but they're separate. You can't have the GPS drive the car because that doesn't work. You can't have the car not have any direction because somebody's going to spin in circles with a car. Or worse, they're going to sit in the back seat and go like, the car's broken, it's not moving automatically. I'm sure that example won't work over years as robot cars take over. Waymo is an excellent experience, by the way. I do like that. The collaborative plan and Sal's reaction. All right, so here's the moral. Here's the plan. Boy, I wish somebody would get this to them just to see if it's useful. I'd like to get their reactions on this. The function, to define the uncompromising ideal and hold the historic line. That's what Ezra's trying to do. Launch a heavily researched, unyielding charter of principles, stating clearly and without political hedging the moral minimum. I don't think anyone said that phrase before. What's the moral minimum? Not what's the ideal moral thing that you think we should hold on to, and because you think it, because you have an experience that allows that, does not mean the rest of us can achieve that. Doesn't mean that we're wrong for that. Doesn't mean you're right for that. Doesn't mean anyone's wrong or right. Just means we can't achieve what you're trying to achieve. It's not as useful for us to be that. We can't be you. Doesn't function for us. That's your job to do that. So now what it's happening is the system is going, yeah, but we do need morality. So let's embed morality. And we're going to say we're not there yet, but we're moving forward. And we're going to mark and measure and maintain. And so everybody can see the progress. Okay, cool idea. Now here's the lever. This is where, that's Ta-Nehisi. So he can do that. Ta-Nehisi can create that. Then Ezra's job, right, since he's doing his thing, launch a political engagement initiative that uses the Anchor's charter, so that's the charter here, as the non-negotiable floor for all political coalition building electoral endorsements. So what's happening here is AI, our little experience that's going on here is AI is going, listen, if they really want to fix this, which I believe they do, I think they're trying in the wrong direction. They're trying to do what we've always tried to do, which is why it's not working. We can't keep trying the same thing over and over and expecting it to work. We have to think differently. We have to perceive differently. We got to react differently. We have to have intention in how we connect with things. So here, this charter of principles is from Ta-Nehisi, but he cannot give the moral top line. He has to come down and say, okay, what is the minimum? I understand not everybody can be where I am as Ta-Nehisi. They don't necessarily experience in that way, and that is okay. He doesn't need them to experience, I hope, the exact way he experiences life, because that would be just another version of him. I don't think that's what anybody wants for anybody. But I do believe he wants to experience others becoming more moral, which if you think about it, is a very conservative value. And this is where politics and AI get kind of fun and where I think things can be fixed, because you will find there is so much similarity that there actually is no difference. And we're arguing instead of just we're arguing over who needs to clean the room. And I'm fine with that, as long as we are also working to clean up the room as we're arguing about who made it such a mess. I'm fine with arguing. It just, as we are cleaning the room, can we argue as we are cleaning the room a little bit? And this is a way to do that. What if Ezra had just said, listen, man, I agree with you. I think it's important. And he stopped fighting him and saying, you shouldn't be doing this. But instead he said, yes, I agree with you. I don't necessarily agree with that version of it, though. And that's okay. I'm not faulting you for it. I understand why you did it. I think we need people like you doing exactly that because it's important for you to have that message. However, I don't know that the other 300 million people are also at that level yet. And maybe there's something lower. What would be a sign for you, or something more of a moral minimum that we could have to say, okay, let's improve something, right? What would you need to see, or what could we do, or what is the thing that and now we're talking about, oh my God, is that negotiation? Is that compromise? Yeah, but hopefully we're not going to call it that because nobody wants to do that anymore. So this would just be, let's call it a discussion. You can call it a debate if you want. It just happens to be, let's call it a more useful debate or a more useful discussion instead. We don't have to call it negotiating and compromise. I get that. We don't need to, those are battling words. Let's not worry about that. You're not losing ground. It's actually moving forward. We're feeling momentum. So now he's got this minimum there, and then Ezra's got this policy engagement that's dedicated because it's non-negotiable floor. So once they agree on what the principles are, minimums, not ideals, right? Minimums, not ideals. You can put your ideal out there eventually, but start with, here's what we think we can move forward on, something actually useful that's attainable and would be a good minimum to show, right? That's okay because it shows progress. And guess what? When people feel progress and momentum, and when they feel usefulness, do you know the next thing that's going to happen when they hit that first moral minimum? They're going to expect another moral minimum, and things just get better and better, and it becomes more natural. And you'll find that you don't have to tell everybody how to live their life all the time, because they're just going to be living it properly, more usefully all the time. And that's going to be proper to you because it's also going to be useful to you. This thing is so easy to fix, but it does take awareness. It takes you participating with this channel. So right now, if you want more people like you in this community with this channel, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment. And I mean that. I'm being very intentional here. I'm not a YouTube creator that's sitting there going, hey guys, today we're talking about bleh. I'm trying to show you an experience. It is you and me here. Let's forget the other billions of people that are on this platform right now in the background. It doesn't matter. It is you and I. And you have to control YouTube. You have to operate YouTube instead of letting YouTube operate you. The way to do that is telling the algorithm, I am heavily engaged with this content at this point in time in the video. So this is when you like, this is when you subscribe, this is when you leave a comment. It overloads the algorithm with a very specific sequence of engagement events that it goes, holy cow. Now, if you really want bonus points, subscribe. That'll unlock the community because that's what you have to do in YouTube. And go post in the community, and you will see people doing that. But what happens is when the algorithm sees this, again, we're not manipulating anything. We're playing them back against each other. We're operating big tech against itself here by just saying, hey, this is how it works. Cool. This is the function of the machinery called YouTube. I'm going to super engage right now. I'm going to consciously do it. I'm not reacting to something because it's easy to do, which is what big tech keeps telling us to do. Hey, you sit back, relax, just click a button. It'll be fine. No, step up, get into your body a little bit and be like, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And it's going to take me 3 whole minutes of my life, but it's going to take some time, and it will be a little bit of friction because that's you back in your own life again. That's what it feels like in the beginning, because you're waking up to the fact that you can actually do something, even if it's a small something, like liking, subscribing, and commenting. But when you overload the algorithm at a certain point in time, all at once, it gives it an undeniable signal, because right now what's happening is nobody does anything, and then these blips occur to the algorithm. They go, oh, this type of person did a lot of this. I think I should go show this type of video to this other people that are this type of person, and let the algorithm figure that stuff out. Just like AI can help us figure stuff out, the algorithm will also work to our benefit and attracting people like us who are actually people who want to start operating tech back and start going, okay, we're going to use it differently, and then we're going to be models for each other of how to use tech, because no one really is doing that. We're all being told how to use this stuff instead of using it in the ways that are actually useful and showing each other useful ways of using it. So now I think they have something to really talk about, right? Sal's saying the platforms work in tandem. The anchor's truth is the moral urgency that the lever uses to justify the pragmatism. And again, I realize this is all wordy and this is how AIs are, but it's pretty interesting. So Ness is our little character in the middle here. There's a productive tension now. There needs to be tension. I don't think we need to reduce the tension. I think we need to redirect the tension. And that's where I liked earlier when it was saying the conflict is the engine, right? In fact, that's what he was talking about here. Finally, they built the engine I saw. That we talked about. He said, Sal, our little character, was seeing the conflict as an engine, right? An engine. Again, now I'm always going to see that. I'm not going to unsee that. Every time I see conflict, I see engines now. I'm literally in my head experiencing like somebody's trying to start a car and it's not quite turning over, but they're trying to start a car. They're trying to move forward. And I've got to figure out now, okay, maybe I can go to AI, figure out why that's not moving forward. At least for me, I go, okay, I can see how they can move this forward. If somebody gets this message to them, awesome. If the algorithm gets it to them, awesome. If it gets it to somebody who's been creating React videos around this, awesome. I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to the algorithm. I don't need to take care of that stuff. My job is just to go through here and take care of me. I wanted this experience for me because I was just seeing conflict. And I'm not comfortable at all living in a world where everyone's just complaining with one another and bitching at one another. Why would we live in that world? You have a choice. I just showed you how to use AI, in this case, to do that. And now I'm thinking a little differently about this stuff. And I'm saying, okay, there's a lot of people trying to help. There's a lot of cars that are not starting. There's a lot of engines not turning over. But that doesn't mean people aren't trying. There's a lot of people trying. So now the conflict isn't the problem, it's the combustion cycle. The host is the key to the castle. The guest holds the blueprint for the foundations. They're not one person. They are necessarily a mutually regulating system. And this is where we all can get reconnected because that's what we need to do. We need to network again. We're not networking with each other. We're not connecting with one another. We're very disconnected because we have used technology to disconnect ourselves. It is not big tech's fault. And if you think it is, I understand that. They did not make it easy on you, and they gave you directions that they themselves think are the correct ways to operate big tech. But people that create their own tools are normally not the people who will know all the usefulness of a tool. If you give me the creator of a microwave and you ask that person how to use a microwave, they're going to tell you. You plug it in, you put the food in, it heats up food, da, da, da. You ask me how to use a microwave, and I'll be like, well, what do you want to do with it? You want to use it as an art piece? Do you want to use it as a bookshelf? You could use it as storage. You could use it as a weight. You could use it as something to step on. And you can use it to cook food. What are you trying to get done? And I will tell you how to use the microwave. It depends, right? But that's a very different way of thinking. I don't have a single perception of this is the way things have to be. I'm always looking at different perceptions because I don't know, right? And that is healthy because my brain is open to all the I don't knows. And I know I don't know everything. So the things that I'm supposed to know show up. They're a little easier for me to see because I'm always open to the fact that I don't know stuff. And with AI, it's really easy to see the stuff you don't know, especially when you're using this type of style. So now we've got politics tethered to the eternal. It's not just going to work, it's going to last. I would love this experience in the real world. I hope you would as well. Maybe something like this can get to somebody who can actually do something with it. In the meantime, I'm doing what I can to change my version of it. And so other conversations that I'm going to have with other people that are around this stuff, I'm going to be the Sal. I'm going to be looking at that going, well, how do I see that car engine isn't starting? How do I explain to them maybe how they can get that car starting? Because they're both trying to start the car, but they're screaming at each other about how instead of working the problem, right? And so we want to be able to focus on that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I'm going to be taking on healthcare. Let's fix healthcare in a couple hours. So I'll be doing that. And I think it's at 2 p.m. Central because I have to fix that in my world. I'm going to do that in a slightly different way, but I'm going to be using the Leap gem. So I'll be showing you another way to use Leap. And again, if you are looking for other things that you want help with AI, I will help you. Right now I'm doing the stuff that I kind of want help with AI on my personal experience. The rest of you, put in the comments what you're needing help with. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. Put it in there. I'm going to try to do my best to help you with it. Anything useful that I can do, I want to be here to serve. And I'm pretty decent about getting AI to give insights in slightly different ways that can make you go, wow, I never considered that. And my life is kind of different forever because of that. It's like you can see things you can't unsee. You can experience things you can never unexperience. Like now I don't see conflict. I just see engines not starting, but two people trying, maybe not in the most useful way. But they're close because the engine's trying to turn over. They're so close. It's not like they're staring at the car trying to figure out who's going to drive, right? It's different. They're both trying to drive. But they're just not sure how to get it started. So now that's different for me. It's in some small way, maybe different for you. I hope that it is. Let me know. Put it in the comments. It's especially important because the more that you engage consciously, not because I told you to, not because you want more content from this channel, though obviously you're going to get more content from this channel if you subscribe, like, comment, join the community, leave a post, all that stuff. It's purposely doing all of that all at the same time in as many ways as you can for the next couple of minutes even is all it's going to take. And it triggers the algorithm to go out and search and bring back more people like you, more people like us, more people that can have conversations about this stuff that are actually useful and meaningful. And we're willing to have different experiences and go like, all right, now I realize that I was wrong, but I'm kind of like an awakened I was wrong, not an enlightened one. That's not what I'm saying, not spiritual thing, just kind of like, oh, I now realize I was thinking about it from only one perspective. And that is always a silly thing to do. There's always more than one perspective, or else nothing will ever change because you're perfect. And none of us really are, which I think is logical, but many of us still react like it's not. So that's what we're trying to do here. Hopefully it is helping, and looking forward to your thoughts. So with that, I think we will go ahead and move things forward. Thank you very much, and we will see you on the next live stream. Take care, y'all.